What's up guys, it's Justin again with another video. Today we're going to be painting this stationforge model. I don't know the name of it exactly. It's part of their one of their lines. But this was released as a free model. It came with a painting PDF, and I was originally thinking about maybe possibly following it, but I think I've changed my mind. I think I'm just going to kind of do my own thing on this, go a little freestyle with it. So I did follow the first step in the tutorial though, and that is to assemble, prime, and then base coat the entire model with I believe this is Rhinox hide, maybe, I'm not sure. It's either Rhinox hide or Mornfang brown. It's one of the blues, or browns. But I think I'm just going to kind of take it from here and do my own thing. I think I'm going to try and just have fun with it. I'm going to turn my brain off for a little bit and paint this model just the way I feel like painting it. So let me go ahead and grab some colors and we'll go ahead and get started. Alright guys, so the first order of business is I want to go ahead and we're going to get underneath everything. We're going to paint all the metallics, and I'm going to use, I say a recipe, but a recipe it is not, because I just kind of came up with it on the fly. I'm using colors that I just think will work to make a decent looking non-metallic metal. So my recipe is going to be Payne's Gray, Thunderhawk Blue, Ash Gray, Spaceship Exterior, and then Matte White. And we're going to start by painting in our mid-tone, so that's going to be our Ash Gray. And we just want to make sure that we get that all over all of the details. And we want to... Ash Gray is actually kind of bright, but that's okay. We can address all of that later. Now, this is part of a new kind of initiative that I'm taking where I don't necessarily know what I'm doing in terms of painting non-metallics. It's not something I do a lot of, and it's not something that I am super comfortable doing, but I also know that if I don't try to do it, I won't ever learn it. So we're going to go ahead and take those first couple steps today. Anytime I've painted non-metallic, pretty much anything, I've found that it works best when I start kind of in my mid-tone. So we're going to start smack in the middle of my colors here, and that is going to be that ash gray. Now I'm sitting here, I'm looking at this on the bottle and even on the palette. It looks a little darker than it's painting right now, and that's not a huge deal. I will be able to correct this as we go along. But if you wanted to start from something a little bit darker, go right ahead. I think I would sub that out for just something just a touch darker. And that's what all these other colors are for. All this other stuff's going to help us kind of get these colors where we want them, move them along. And then another thing is this is the first video I'm testing it out. I've bought a microphone, an external microphone for my camera. So if things sound better, please let me know. So there's the legs. I'm going to go ahead and just make a cut. We're going to paint all the rest of the gray details. Alright, so it's not done, but we're most of the way there. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to mix some Thunderhawk Blue into the Ash Gray mix, and we are going to just kind of start to establish some shadows a little bit. Nothing has to be perfect here, but what I'm going to do is, like here on the arm, I'm going to grab like the lower portion of the arm. And the idea here is I'm just going to sketch these in so that I have an idea where my shadows are going to sit before I start blending anything together. I'm going to kind of trace where these two panels meet. I'm going to trace what might seem silly as the upper side of this, because I feel like where there's cloth directly overlapping it, that's going to create a shadow, and the highlight is going to be on the bottom piece of this. I'm going to grab these little under sections here. the top of this, you know, just stuff like that. And the size of these shadows doesn't matter a whole lot. I mean, it does, but again, we're nowhere near what is going to be final here. I'm just trying to establish where I want things to roughly sit. On the axe here, we're going to create some kind of interesting shadow points here on the edge of the axe. I also want to kind of grab kind of like that bottom edge here. Now, I think the tricky part is going to be some of the smaller details, and I'm not really going to concern myself with them too much. I think what I want to do is just kind of get the big stuff out of the way and then figure it out from there. Now, I'm not going for like a chrome or anything like that, so this is just going to be kind of like a bright iron or steel, maybe. Just something that reads as like a metallic gray, in the words, I guess, of Kenny Boucher. You know, silver is just metallic gray, and that's kind of what I'm going for here. So anything that I think would definitely be in shadow, we're just going to hit with this blue. Don't think about it too much, I guess. Again, I'm not a professional here. I don't exactly know the ins and outs or the science behind this. All I know is that I'm going to keep practicing it, and once things stick and I figure it out, I'll be able to refine that technique and better the technique the more that I do it. So something like this. Make sure we get the gun, you know, just the underside of everything, and that's usually like a good kind of I guess practice is if you're ever in doubt, just kind of grab the bottom end of cylinders, grab things that are pointing downwards, pull your shadows down towards the bottom, because you want to light the top of your model more than you light the bottom of the model, things like that. And then if it doesn't look right, fix it. You know, it's paint. We're putting it on thin layers, and we're putting it on thin layers for a reason, so we can go back and adjust mistakes. So I think I'm pretty content with that. Now I think I'm going to go ahead and start pulling things a little bit in the opposite direction as well. So we're just going to grab a little bit of that gray. We're going to mix that in with our spaceship exterior, which is a very light gray. And we don't really need a ton of this. This is going to kind of be pushing towards that maximum highlight. We don't want a ton of this, but we do want a little bit, just so that there's a little bit of extra shine. So for here, I want to start thinking about where my main highlight's going to be. I'm thinking like maybe pointing down from this side. So we're going to grab like this little bit of the axe here. We're going to grab this top angle. We're going to grab this and just paint a little line on there. And then using that kind of rough estimation, we're just going to pick out where those highlights would sit. So grab the toes, grab this edge here. You know, the hardest part is the first couple steps, but once you start layering more and more and more and more on, and you start figuring out where you're going to put those highlights, and you start thinking about how the light's going to interact with the surface, and where things are going to sit, and how they're going to sit, you'll keep putting more and more and more and more on, and eventually it'll make sense, because it's not done until you've decided that you're done with it. So if you work all these highlights in, you don't like the way it looks, you put it down and you never touch it again, I guess that means it's done. But if you keep pushing it back and forth, eventually it will make some sort of sense. Now, don't sit here and waste your life trying to perfect every single thing the first time you've ever practiced a technique like this, but you know, there's no harm in pushing it back and forth a little bit, trying to figure it out, trying to make sense of it, and instead of just being content and you know, letting it exist the way that it does if you're not happy with it. So find that medium. You know, don't waste your time, but you know, take a little pride. Again, top edge, grab some like little subtle highlights here. Now the way this looks now, this reads like super white, because it's a very, very, very light gray. And in fact, until like if I took like a pure white and I popped that like right here, that still reads as white until I put that white on it. So, you know. So from here, what I'm going to do is I'm going to start intensifying those shadows. So I'm going to skip the pure Thunderhawk blue. We're going to grab some of this Payne's gray. We're going to mix this into our Thunderhawk blue just to get a really, really, really nice, deep, dark shadow color. And I'm going to try not to go too much darker than like this, because I don't want to go to pure black unless I have to. And I could use that as like a black lining type of deal, but I want to reinforce these shadows a little bit up here. And then once you start tracing this in and dropping this dark blue in, once you hold the model farther away from yourself, you're going to look at it and you're going to go, okay, yeah, that's starting to look a little bit like it's metal. And that's the whole idea here. It doesn't need to look like metal immediately up close. You want to start by, you know, getting it far away, and then once you refine it, hopefully the closer you get, the more it looks like metal. And then one more time, you know, I am not in any way a professional at doing this. This is like maybe like the third or fourth time I've attempted to do non-metallic metal, but I thought it's important to capture some of this so that I can maybe inspire somebody to try it, or, you know, put my not interpretation, but like, you know, the way I think about it and the way I think about painting in general. I think you know, it's important to consider the way that you paint and why you paint the way you do, as much as it is you know, the techniques that you're using to get the effects and the results that you're trying to get. And then even on top of that, if I'm doing something wrong, or if I could do something better, or if my colors aren't great, somebody can reach out and say, hey Justin, you know, maybe try using this color, maybe mix a little bit of this in, maybe, you know. And then I'm also learning on top of everything. Now, this has gone quite blue quite quickly, but that's okay, because we can always pull it back out. And I know I said I didn't want to go too much darker than this, but I think I might just grab some of that pure Payne's gray and just grab some of these really extreme shadow sections. Just do a little bit of like lining, I guess, because I can always glaze like a gray over top of all this stuff, and it will start to maybe go the way that I want it to. Another thing fighting me is this brush is splitting a little bit, and that's not fun. So, you know, something a little bit like this, and then we can start working back the other way. One thing I have definitely learned when painting non-metallic metal is it's a lot of back and forth. So if you don't enjoy the process of, you know, making very subtle changes and small changes and things like that, you're probably not going to have fun painting this way. You're probably better off just throwing down some normal metallics and throwing some washes down and highlighting as normal. And there's nothing wrong with that. But I would like to try to become a slightly better painter. So part of that is pulling yourself out of that comfort zone and figuring out what works and what doesn't, and trying new things and messing around and hoping for the best. So this is, it's kind of leaning a little more like chrome than I want. So what I think I'm going to do is I think I'm actually going to take and I'm going to mix just a little bit of Payne's Gray into this Thunderhawk Blue and Ash Gray mix, just to kind of maybe hopefully darken it a little bit. It's turned into like a sky blue. Maybe I do need black. I tried to stay away from it, but I don't think it's going to happen. Because I don't want this to read as blue, kind of like it's doing right now. And that's what the Thunderhawk Blue is for. It's like a very desaturated, kind of bluey green almost. And I can really kind of easily pull that kind of out a little bit. And I just need a very like small band of that next to the darkest color. And then I really want like a mix between those two. Maybe a little darker though. So maybe if I just pop like just a teeny, not even a drop of black into that mix, or we can even, actually this might work too. Throw some, we got some German gray here. I'll put that here. I think part of my problem is my midtone is too light, and I also think that my highlights are too bright. So I think if I mixed a little bit of this in here, that's going to put me closer to what I'm trying to achieve. So like, again, just kind of pull that little knee pad section down a little bit. That's already looking a lot nicer. And then I can turn these into glazes using a little bit of medium, and I can start glazing these in and creating these little transitions or whatever. Yeah, I think that actually is kind of the sauce. So I think what I might actually end up doing is repainting all of these sections that are light gray, like just kind of glaze this out into like pure German gray, just so that it reads a little bit closer to what I want, and then pop my highlights on from there, because this is a much closer looking color than what I was trying to do earlier. So I would actually, I don't think I would take ash gray out, but I think I would just skip white and make my highlight color like my highest point, that spaceship exterior. And I really wouldn't even use that a ton. I think I would just kind of grab a couple small sections with that to, you know, create the impression that this is like a dark colored metallic, rather than something that's like super bright. So yeah, that looks way nicer. And it helps kind of wipe that blue out a little bit. Alright, so I guess I'm going to go rework this a little bit and I'll be back. Alright, so I have pushed this back and forth a little bit. I'm much happier with it now. There is a small change I need to make, or not really a change, but one thing I forgot to paint, and that's another highlight on this side of the gun. So we're just going to go ahead and grab that real quick. We're just going to take some white and just paint a line. Doesn't need to be perfect, just want to get that on there like that. Okay, so much happier with this now that it's kind of darkened down a little bit. I think it reads a lot closer to metal. All I really did was I kind of subbed out my ash gray in my midtone for this German gray, and I kind of mixed a little bit of ash gray into it, and I just kind of reworked the highlights a little bit. Now these aren't done. A friend of mine basically explained to me one time that like painting non-metallic metal is kind of difficult to do just by itself. Like, I've been practicing NMM gold on this for a little while, and like the back doesn't look great, but the front looks a lot better. But it's one of those things where like you have to get it to a point and then move on, because once you give a little bit more context to the rest of the mini, it helps you figure out where you need to start placing things and what colors need to go where. So we're going to take a step back from the NMM just for a little bit, and we're going to start working on some of the other colors. Now, I was considering leaving this cloak brown, and I'm still kind of on the fence, but I think I'm going to paint it red. I think I'm going to go red. I've got a couple reds here. I've got Citadel's Mephiston red, and I've also got Dragon red. I think the first color is the Dragon red, and I'm going to mix in just a teeny little bit of Payne's gray into that, just to kind of pull it down a little bit, and we can use that as our shadow color. Now I've kind of committed to using two main colors for like my universal highlight and my universal shadow. So we're going to use Payne's gray for the shadow color. Now I think the big exception to that might be when we get to any non-metallic gold. You know, we might switch gears a little bit, but we'll see how it goes. And then my highlight color is Arid Earth. I think it's Arid Earth from Army Painter. So yeah, so what I'm going to do is I'm just going to lay down a nice dark base coat of this red color, get things kind of established, just so that we've got a nice deep rich red tone to highlight from, and then we can decide if we're going to pull those shadows down, where we're going to put our highlights, and just kind of take the mini from there. Yeah, so I know you don't want to sit here and watch me base coat this entire thing, so we're going to just kind of skip through this, and I'll be back when it's done. Alright, so now that we've gone ahead and painted all that red down, we're going to take some Payne's gray. I'm just going to thin it down a bunch, and we're going to make kind of a glaze out of it. And like I said, we're going to use that universal highlight and shadow color, and I just want to kind of establish some of this Payne's gray in some of the deeper folds and where I think the shadows would sit. I also want to use this to kind of define edges and things. So anywhere where two materials meet, or where cloth meets cloth, I'm just going to drag that into there. All these hard folds like that, I think, is a good place for them. And then I can kind of almost panel line, if you will, around some of these details and things, just to add that extra little bit of definition. For the hood and things like that, we're going to just kind of grab like the underside of stuff, so drag some up under these folds here. And stuff like that. So some of that's still a little teeny tiny bit wet, but that's okay. We'll just work our way around until it gets dry or whatever. But yeah, so just, you know, keep glazing that down in the shadows. Make sure you kind of darken anything that you want in shadow down. Remember, we're going to work this back up, so don't worry too much if you worry you went too far. It's not going to be too hard to pull that back up. Alright, so I'll be back in a minute. Alright, so now we're going to take our Dragon Red. We are going to do the same thing. We're going to thin that down to a glaze, and we're just going to start pushing that towards our highlights and towards like the bottom of the cloak. Now you don't want to push it up into those recesses that we were talking about, like anywhere that you really want that shadow glaze to settle. You want to stay away from that. You can always kind of like come in with a finer brush and your intermediate colors and start working that back out if you think you pushed it too far. But I'm pretty much focusing on the tops of folds and stuff here. So we're going to dodge that little bit right here, and we're just going to work on that outside edge. And in this one, we're almost going to do like an edge highlight. It's kind of thin to be doing an edge highlight, and if you want, you can even just grab some pure paint and like actually just sort of edge highlight it. But I'm going to keep working this red, and I'm going to try my best to avoid all those areas where we put that shadow kind of intentionally, because we want to preserve that a little bit. So I will be back in just a minute. Alright, so the last thing I've done is I took some of that Mephiston red, and we have mixed in just the tiniest little bit of arid earth, and we're just going to do like a final highlight on like the very tops of things. Now this is going to be a little bit more pinky, I guess, than I really actually truly want. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to try and reserve this for the absolute highest highlights, and then I think what I'm going to do is I'm going to glaze red over top of it. And what that should do is it should deepen any of the red that's already down, and then it should kind of repaint this as like my red highlight. Now I don't completely hate this. It looks like a really faded kind of red versus being like a pink, and that's kind of the danger of adding any kind of bright colors to red, is it kind of teeters that line a little bit. You know, we'll see what this looks like once I've got it down on everything, but we're pretty much following the same principle. I'm really trying to focus on edges and corners and things like that. Might help if I showed this on camera, but you know, I don't think it looks bad, but we'll have to see how it looks once we get a little further along and get everything done up. So again, kind of focusing this down here on the absolute edges, wherever the highlight I think would be the strongest. You know, pull it towards hard corners, pull it towards the bottoms or the outer edges of things, something like that. If you need to switch to a smaller brush, I think now would be a good time, because we've covered most of the like larger areas and stuff. So if you're more comfortable with a smaller brush, I think now is a good place. So I'm going to go ahead and carry on through this, and then I'll come back before we make that decision. Alright, so there's where our red sits. I think I'm going to leave it for now. I think I'm going to use the same principle as I am with the non-metallic metals. I'm just going to let it sit. We'll put some more stuff on the Mini. We'll see how it goes, and then we'll take it from there. So I took some Mornfang Brown and some XV88. I'll kind of mix them together, and we're going to make kind of like a lightish leather color. And we're just going to paint this all over the leather details. Now this is pretty different from what I'm used to doing. Normally I'll paint something a little bit darker, like a Rhinox hide. I really like the tone of that for leather, but I think I wanted to mix things up a little bit here, go a little bit lighter, and see how it looks. Because if I don't like it, I can always go back and just paint it again. So the principle here, or the idea here, is I'm just going to paint all the straps to start with, and then we'll kind of take it from there. This is about a 50-50 mix to start with, and then I'm gonna probably do like a glaze or a wash of Agrax, maybe, just to darken things down a little bit, and then get those hard lines of separation, and then use that XV88 to kind of do my, I guess, almost weathering to the leather, because I don't want this to look like brand new leather. I think that this guy being like a scrapper, or he looks kind of like he's a scrapper or something, I think his pouches and his backpack and stuff would be real beaten up. So we're gonna try and use that to our advantage. Now I do think I'm going to take just regular XV88 and I'm going to paint the water pouch that I don't know why he has, because he's definitely like probably a robot. He looks like a robot. I don't know why he needs a water pouch, but whatever. We're not. Maybe it's oil. Who knows? So grab that. We're gonna paint some more of this. Try not to get it onto other areas if you can help it. There we go. Something like that. I think I'll do the opposite for down here. They've got like this little, I'm going to assume it's like a battery or something on his backpack. I'm not really sure what it is, but there's something holding it in place, and it looks like it's like tied on. So we're going to paint that like a little bit darker. So we're going to use pure Mornfang for that. You know, he's starting to come together a little bit. Now, before I jump into shading this down, I think I am going to pop in my highlights first. So we're going to jump into that pure XV88, and I'm going to get a nice tip on my brush, and we're just going to kind of grab the edges here, pick out some little lines and details, and scratch things up a little bit. I never really know like how much is too much when I'm doing these leather details. It's one of the things I struggle with. Usually it turns out okay, but I do worry that I'm like overdoing it or it looks weird or something. So just try to keep them as small as I can, and you know, hope for the best. Now, the one thing I like about GW models over models like this is it seems like sometimes details like this on these types of minis is sort of an afterthought, whereas sometimes with the GW models they seem to sculpt a lot more folds and creases and stuff into these leather details, and it makes them a little bit easier to paint. But I do like the challenge, and I do think that some of these models provide a little bit more of a style difference to like a GW model, so there's always that. I also just realized I forgot to paint these little stitchings on his little robe here, so we're going to paint those in XV88, and we'll probably highlight those up to like a bone color or like a khaki or like, you know, an off-white or something, just to make them stand out a little bit more. And then this part, especially at least for me, seems to be a lot more like back and forth, like let the paint dry, let it settle, figure out where it's dark, where it's working, where it's not, and then you just kind of go back with a little bit more to kind of emphasize those highlights a little bit. You can always let this dry completely and add like a new highlight layer in, just to brighten it up a little bit extra if you're not really satisfied with where the color's sitting. I try not to push my leathers and stuff like that too far because I don't want to I just don't want them to be like super crazy bright or anything like that. So there we go, just kind of work my way around and find what I missed or what I want to keep working on. But I think that's pretty good. Alright, so I'm going to let that dry for a minute or two, and then we'll come back and talk about washes. Alright, I lied. We're not going to do washes yet. We're going to do a little bit more glazing. I think I'm going to pull this red back just a tiny bit more. So what I've done is I took my dragon red, I've thinned it down to a glaze, so something like that. And I'm going to take it from about midway, and I'm just going to kind of pull that highlight up into the shadow a little bit, just to kind of bring a little bit of that richness back into the red. I think I pushed it just a little too far, but if you like the way that looks, keep it that way. I just want to pull it back just a little bit. So I'm going to go ahead and do this, and then we'll come back and we will actually look at doing the washes on the leather and stuff. Okay, so I know I said Agrax Earthshade, but we're going to actually use Seraphim Sepia here, and we're just going to kind of be as gentle as we can here. We're just going to basically hit all these leather areas, trace over, try not to let it pool too much. And what I like to do is I like to just kind of cover up these little sections of weathering I've done, and what that will sort of do is blend those two colors together, because you've got like a medium brown and like a lighter, like almost orangey yellowy brown, and that just sort of ties them together and makes them look a little bit more like actual leather. When it comes to this water skin thing, we just painted that XV88. I think the wash will be enough. I am going to go ahead and I'll highlight it with something later, but we'll get there when we get there. But maybe a couple layers of this just to kind of help tie all these colors in, make things look the way we want them to. And yeah, so we're gonna let that dry. We might need a second layer. I don't think so. I think that'll be fine. I don't know what's next. We got a couple things we can do from here, but I'm gonna let this dry, and we'll come back and look at it. Alright, so what I'm going to do now is I'm going to start a little bit of the weathering process here. I've taken Mornfang Brown, I've thinned it down to like a dirty paint water glaze, and I'm going to kind of run this into a lot of the sections here on the exposed like skeleton. I'm not going to wash the entire thing. I'm just going to kind of pick certain sections out. Big flat open panels, like inside where like the knee and stuff is, stuff like that. The idea here is this is going to dry much thinner than it looks like when you put it on, and it's going to sort of look like rust and dirt and dust and stuff that's accumulated inside of these joints and around the model, things like that, just so that we can kind of bring this guy to life a little bit. And what this is also going to do is save me a little bit of trouble as far as major reinforcements to the NMM. And I'm not doing this because of that. I'm doing this because I wanted to do this anyway. but it'll make those last couple steps of fixing any problems with the NMM a little bit easier. Now if there's any areas that you think it's not enough, just go ahead and throw another layer in there. And like here on this leg, if there's too much, just wet your brush and kind of wipe it away. It shouldn't stain too hard, and it should be pretty easy to move around as long as you work fairly quickly. You know, don't dwell on it too much. But you know, I want this guy to look like, again, he's been out collecting scrap or whatever. He definitely looks like that's what he does. Let's see, I think I want more here. Yeah. Oh, that's way too much. So see how that pool just wake that up. Alright, so I think the next logical step for me is probably painting the lenses and then figuring out what I want to do with the backpack. And then we can start like popping in details, and in fact we can even start doing some of that now. So like here on the leg, there's these little pistons. I think I'm going to paint those like a bright red. Just one little coat should be fine for that. And then we can kind of come back in and hit that with another layer. If I had actually realized that those were there sooner, I probably would have done that first, but that's okay. Yeah, I mean, there's not really a ton of extra stuff that's left to do. I think I'm going to paint the eyes green. I think that'll be fun. Green's one of those colors that I sort of struggle with a little bit, so we'll see what we can get out of it. Alright, so I've gone ahead and I've done the initial base coat on these. I used the Army Painter's Angel Green, and I just mixed in Flash Gets Yellow. You can use any yellow. And I've gone ahead, this is not quite a 50-50, but it's close to a 50-50. And we're just going to kind of paint in the center of that, leaving a little bit of that previous layer. Just work slowly, work carefully. We're going to brighten that up just a little bit. Go, something like that. Then your brush, we're going to add just the teeniest bit more yellow. Get a nice point on your brush. And again, we're just going to pop it into a smaller section. Get that really bright. And then one more time with almost pure yellow. We want just a little bit of green still in there just to kind of emphasize that. And as small as you can manage to get it. Oops. Just touch the very center of each one of those eyes. And that should look a little bit like it's glowing. I'm still not sure what I want to do with the backpack. I think that's kind of like my biggest weak point right now is figuring out what to do with the rest of that, because I don't really I'm feeling a little bit lazy. I don't really want to paint more NMM on the backpack, where like when I was initially painting it I didn't really realize how much of it was metal until like now that I'm looking at it. So I think what I'm going to do, I am going to be a little bit lazy here. I'm going to take this German gray, and I think I'm going to paint it over like the entirety of the backpack like it's painted metal. And then I'm just going to pick out some details to do in my NMM, which fortunately for me is, you know, the base of that is this German gray color. And we can also use this to tidy things up or to, you know, paint details we might have missed, because another thing is on the front of this guy, let me finish this. On the front of this guy there is a bunch of grenades. Now these are going to be really easy to do because they're just kind of real tiny. So I just need to grab like a couple little highlights here and there, and it should hopefully read the way I want it to. But he's also got like this little like stomach plate that I completely missed, so we're going to grab that too. And then we can also, if we want to, you know, now's a good time to start touching up areas where you want to fix things. But we're going to start by, I'm going to try and remember exactly how I did this. We got the German gray. We're going to mix in just that little teeny tiny bit of that ash gray just to lighten it up just a little. And then for these are cylinders, so we're just going to grab a highlight kind of towards the top, towards where we want our highlights to be. And then for the stomach plate, kind of drag some of that down towards the bottom. Something like that. Next we're going to grab just the teeniest bit of ice yellow, aired earth, mix that into that gray. That's going to give us our highlight color. And we're going to paint like our extreme highlights. So grab that rivet. And then just kind of edge highlight the bottom here. Something like that. Now details for the backpack. I'm just going to do like these little, I don't even know what to call them. These little bands. And then like this tube section here, we're just going to grab the bits that are sticking upwards. And then this little grenade thing, I'm going to paint like that. And then the tops of these little things right here. Nothing too crazy, nothing too involved. We get to be a little bit lazy, but still get it done. We can also grab the antenna here, just kind of grab like two sides of it. And then we'll grab that highlight color. We'll kind of fix all that in. Grab a little edge highlight here. Something like that. And then grab some. And then for those other sections, again, we're just going to highlight it like it's a cylinder. We're going to grab the tippy tops of these little rivet things. And then everything else that's left is just kind of like detailing. So, you know, if I want to grab a little bit more of that, I can do like a little bit of this. And then just use the colors that are already on your palette to kind of pick out whatever extra details you want to highlight. I guess I could do these little vent dudes. And then just the slightest little highlight down here at the bottom. Can do like some green for these lights and buttons and stuff. Red here. And then we can even use that yellow to highlight the red for the buttons if we wanted to. We're going to focus on the green for right now. Just pick those details out. Get things nice and bright and shiny. And there we go. I'm mostly pleased with this. I think I'm going to take some white, maybe. Try not to use too much like pure black or pure white if I can help it. Actually, no, let's use just the air to earth. That'll work. I'm going to just put a teeny little dot of this. I'm going to thin it down just a touch. And I want to grab the smallest section of these eyes that I can. And then anything else that's glowing. It's just going to get that little white dot. And it's not really a white dot. And then the last thing to do is NMM gold. And we're just going to default to some of these colors here that we had before. So we're going to use Mornfang, we're going to use XV88, and I'm going to use XV88 mixed with a little bit of flash lights just to kind of push the yellow but not have like that bright, pure, like in your face yellow. And then that arid earth will be our like final like shine color. So the one area that I really wanted to put some gold on was the gun, just to break things up a little bit. So like, let's grab like the barrel here. And then like this front, in front of the cylinder here. And I guess we'll also do the iron sights on the top. That should be enough for the gun. And then for the axe, we're gonna do these little, this little section here. So just kind of paint that in. And right now I'm just using Mornfang brown to get things started. I also realized I forgot these things in the PDF that came with this guy. They painted them just different colors. I think I might just paint them like an NMM and take it from there, but we'll see. So I'm going to switch over to a smaller brush. I'm going to knock a bunch of paint off my desk. And we're just going to start like picking out highlights. So we're going to follow the same rules as everything else we've done up to this point. We're going to grab like the whole top of these round bits. So anything from like being perpendicular to the ground and up. And then for this, we're just going to choose a direction. So I think I'm going to do it from like almost the end here to about the halfway point. And then for this, we're going to start about halfway up the side on the highlight side, and then go to the top, and on the other side we're just going to grab that bottom edge just as like a little bit of a bounce highlight, I guess. I don't actually know how any of this stuff really truly actually works, so you'll have to excuse me for my ignorance. I'm just kind of painting things the way that they feel right. So we're going to put a little more highlight. That's too much moisture on my brush. We're going to paint this kind of on the upper little bit here. And then same deal with this. We're going to work that like that, and just the top of these sections here. With the beauty of like doing smaller sections is it's very much less is more. So like the more reserved you are with these details, like if you just save just small highlights and little pops of color, you don't really have to blend anything to get the effect you're looking for. You just have to use the right colors, I guess. And these are colors I'm not really like married to, I guess, but I think they work pretty well. So we're going to do, this is still Flash Gets Yellow, it's just a little bit more Flash Gets Yellow in the mix, and this is going to give it that you know, kind of shiny gold appearance. I don't know, gold is tough. I don't know what I'm really doing here. And then we're going to grab just that arid earth. That's going to be like the final color. And that's going to be like our white. And that just really needs to be like dotted on in certain places to kind of sell that effect. Try and line this up with other highlights if you can. Because it will sort of sell that shine effect. And you really don't need a ton of this. You really just need to dot it in some places. You don't gotta go too crazy. Okay, last little bit. I feel like I've said that about 6 times now. But I keep noticing like little things that I would change or add to. I'm going to take some Sotek green. We're going to introduce a new color all the way at the end here. I'm going to paint these little guys right here. I'm just going to pop that Sotek green in there like that. And in fact, we can even flood like this whole area. And then what we can do beyond that is kind of turn it into a glaze and grab, like pull it into itself a little bit. So it looks like there's like energy kind of pulsing through. And then again, we need that white that we try not to use too much of. White's almost out, so We're going to mix just a little bit of white into that Sotek green. And this is going to be like our highlight for these little thingies right here. We're going to grab one little highlight with the big fat brush here. And then I'm going to switch over to a clean brush. I'm going to add just a teeny bit more white. We're going to do another line, try and keep it as close to the middle as we can. And then once more, we're going to not even clean our brush, so we want just the tiniest suggestion of blue still in there, and we're just going to grab the middle. And that is pretty much it. I'm gonna paint these little, I don't want to paint them red. I don't know what color I want to paint them. I don't know. I guess we could just do like gray. And then XV88 for the little connecting segments. And then once that dries, I'll like highlight it or something. I don't know, but you get the idea. This is pretty much where he's going to be. The last thing I have left to do, and I will go ahead and do that on camera in a few minutes when he has dried up a little bit more. I want to base him. We're not going to go too crazy with the basing here. I think just throw down some pigment or something and kind of tie him into the base, and that'll be that. So I'll be back in a minute. Alright, so I've already made a huge mess trying to do this. What we're going to do is we're going to take some burnt sienna pigment. These are some old Vallejo pigments I had. I'm going to find my dishes. I'm going to take one of these dishes. I'm going to put some of this pigment in there. And I'm going to basically mix it with just a little bit of rubbing alcohol and water to make like kind of a paste. But the idea is this is going to cause the pigment to bind to the base, and it makes almost like a paint. And we're just going to dab that on pretty heavy. You don't need a lot of moisture for it to start to stick. Now another way you could do this is you could probably just go ahead and stick your pigment to the base and then use like a pigment fixer or something. You could use medium, whatever you want. I'm just slapping this stuff on here because I want it to be kind of thick, have a little bit of texture, not too much. Also, use an old brush that you don't care about because you will definitely ruin your brush. With this, because this pigment will like dry up inside the brush if you're, not super careful, I guess. Alright, so I'm gonna let that dry. We'll come back and see what it looks like. Alright, so after we let that mix dry, basically the pigment doesn't have anything to bite into, so it kind of turns back into pigment a little bit once everything evaporates. So I went ahead and took a little bit of water PVA and I airbrushed it over the top. You could use like a matte varnish or something like that if you wanted to. It's sticking much better now, but I still think I want to do another layer. Now this layer should bite in a little bit better because there's a layer underneath it. So I'm just going to take a little bit of pigment that's still on this paper towel. I really don't need too much. We're going to, I guess we will make another bit of paste because I kind of did it off camera. So just dab a tiny bit of that. That's probably too much, honestly, but and then we're going to add, this is 50-50 isopropyl and water. We're just going to do a couple drops in there, just enough to get the top of it wet. And you take that old janky brush and you stir it up, and it turns into just kind of like a thick paste. Remember, the less water, the thicker it's going to be, the easier it's going to be to apply the way that we want to apply it. And then we're just going to, again, dab that over the top. Now, if you wanted to, you could also like mix this with like basing elements and stuff like that. I might throw like a tuft on here or something, but not too worried about it at this exact moment. But once you do that, I'm going to hit it with the hair dryer, and then I'm going to do another layer of that PVA water mix just to lock it down. Alright, so the last couple steps are pretty straightforward. We're just going to take some more of this pigment and we're going to just dry brush it, or not really dry brush it, it's dry already, but we're going to brush it around the model's feet. And you want to get some on the base itself as well, because it's going to kind of tie. Once you start putting you know, any kind of liquid on these dry pigments, the colors change a little bit even after they dry. So this will kind of help tie those back in a little bit. Oh, well, that was unexpected. So I'm going to glue him back on, and then we're going to give him a matte varnish, and then he's done. So I will show you some pictures at the end.